Why it is so underrated? Nobody teaches listening.
I don't know. Maybe because we're too busy talking?
Tatiana Kolovou, a teaching professor in the prestigious Kelley School of Business. And on top of that, she is LinkedIn instructor.
We don't all come into the world and have one career. From fitness to business, in my mind, it makes sense. To someone else, it may seem crazy, but I don't care. It works for me. Don't expect people to connect the dots. You have to connect the dots for them. You know how sometimes you ask for something and someone says yes, and then you go, oh no, now what am I going to do? Because of the discomfort that change creates, I believe that the important part of the communication process is the communication you give to yourself. It starts from there. Because whatever happens in here is what you project out.
How are you using communication to communicate your value?
Don't assume all of it is spoken word. That doesn't happen by osmosis. And just like the gears in the car, high intensity or high impact listening is fifth gear listening. The biggest lesson I've learned from setbacks and failure is the clarity of letting something go. So my first recommendation always is...
Hi, Tatiana. I'm so happy to have you on my podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ani. We've known each other for quite a long time now. We've met in person one time, so it's wonderful to be in your e-home.
And I want to start this with telling a little story how I get to know about you. It was several months after I left my corporate job and I was in Greece, and I was thinking, let me think about LinkedIn trainings. And I suddenly thought that listening is a skill that nobody talks about, and it's so important. And I started looking, and you were the only person that was teaching listening. So I listened to your training, and then I never thought that you're Greek, because Tatiana, I don't connect Tatiana with a Greek name. And then I followed you on LinkedIn, and then I saw, oh, Tatiana is in Greece. Oh, and then this is how I understood you're Greek, because even your last name is not that, it's not Mitsotakis or Vardinoyannis, right? So with that introduction, let me ask you to talk about yourself. Who is Tatiana? What are these experiences? What is the context we can put around you so people know who is this person in front of them when they watch or listen to the podcast?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being attracted to the Greekness of me, which I hold loud and proud on the LinkedIn platform. You probably know and have seen now, and you live in Greece, and I'm honored that you chose Greece as the country to live in, that we're everywhere, and everywhere we are, we try to communicate the fact that we are Greek. There's a lot of pride that goes with being an Ellinas. I came to the United States in 1984. You can do the math. I was 17. I came to attend university, but the 10 years before that were very formative. I lived and was born and raised in Athens, Greece, in a time that was quite a big changing phase in Greece in the 80s. Lots of things were becoming modernized. It was the time that younger people were looking more outwards and were looking to find opportunities. And that was me. I was looking to build a new life and a different future than the one that I had in Greece. My first formative event, I've made some notes to remember, not to forget some of the things that were important. I lost my father at the age of 7, and that was a very sad but very formative event in my life, because from there on, as you may know, people that have lost loved ones, especially at a young age, it becomes, it makes you a different person. It makes you a much more responsible person, a mature person. In a way, I lost my childhood in the process of that because there was a lot of survival. We moved in Athens, as you know, is a crazy busy city. We lived in the suburbs in a beautiful home. My father was an executive, and we had to downsize in a 2-bedroom bedroom, one bathroom apartment. I've written about a little bit of that on LinkedIn, and it's interesting to see the huge reaction that I get when I talk about personal things, because we all have a story, and what we've gone through forms us. But that experience taught me to be innovative. It taught me to be a survivor. And the next event, because you asked sort of for formative events, when I was 12, a few years later, I had a very serious spinal surgery that needed to happen, but it really stopped me on my tracks. Went to England. My mother was a British citizen, and we were able to benefit from the healthcare system there because I was under the age of, I think, 15, 16. So I had fusion on my spine, which created a situation where I was in a body cast. On my way there, I was in a wheelchair, and I was told, this is important, I would never be very active. I would live a healthy life, but I would not be very active. And I'm not a person that you tell me what I cannot do, because if you tell me that, I will go do that and try to prove you wrong. Sometimes that's not a good thing, but at the age of 12, my father was a swimmer and a water polo player. All I wanted to do was be like my dad. So I took the bus and the trolley. There were two things that I had to get to. I walked to the pool, said to the coach, I want to be on the team. In fact, I was doing rehab, but I wanted to be on the team. I wanted to be an athlete, not a recovering, I would say, orthopedic patient. And that changed my life. That sport for me helped me find a part of myself that had the ability to push beyond myself, to find limits, to design what I wanted to do, to set goals. I'm making this very simple, but at a young age, when you're able to find something like this, and with the strong guidance of Mr. Marcos Madalufas, he was the head coach of the team in Olympiacos, we still stay in touch. He was a mentor, and he was a guide to me at a time where I needed that. So I was never driven to practice. We didn't have a car. My brother and I pretty much, were latchkey children. My mother worked very hard to make ends meet, but those years were formative for me. So when you say, who am I grew up in that environment. I had the opportunity with a very generous donation from my father's company when he passed to be able to study in the United States, and I took the opportunity and ran. But you probably know, by living in Greece by now, there's a word called philotimo, which you may have heard, or you may see people act this way. When you're Greek, you have philotimo in you. It's the love of honor. And it's a way, it's your values that you're raised. And I'm not sure how this happens, but it's in the environment, and it influences who you are and who you can become. Some of us take advantage of it. Some of us don't. Hopefully all can live up to that value. But that's kind of the story and the background of what brought me to this country.
Wow, that's such a story. I would never think that you, being so active, once upon a time was told that you are not going to be...
No.
Unbelievable.
In fact, they said, you're not going to be very active. You can't, they named things like, you can't do horseback riding, downhill skiing. That is an economic band was not, we couldn't have the money to go skiing. And they said, no long distance running, no marathon running. It's true. I have a fused back. I do a lot of cross training. I do a lot of different things. But there's one race that I did in 2015, and it was the Athens Marathon. And I recommend any Greek or any person that could live through that experience. That's the original course from the city of Marathon all the way into Athens. It's not an easy course. Philippidis, the messenger that delivered the message that the Athenians won that war, that battle, collapsed when he did it. And it was a hard course, but it was worth every single inch of that course to do it. An incredible life moment. So yeah, they said I couldn't do it. I did one. It's one and done, but I'm glad I did that one. It's in November. You should check it out. There's a lot of energy around that race.
Definitely. Now I hear it is every year, right? So
Every year,
I hear
November.
about this race. Yeah, absolutely. Sports and then academic career. How this happened?
So, because of the influence of swimming and sport, I picked up a book. I just posted about this on LinkedIn and a post about curiosity, because the next coach that I ended up following and working with was a very famous, the most famous and awarded swimming coach by the name of Doc Councilman. So I got the book while I was still swimming, and I noticed that around the sport of swimming, which I love, there was biomechanics, there was physiology, exercise physiology, and I thought, this is what I want to study. This is so interesting. So I came to Indiana University to study the science of sport, the background that is the foundation of everything that we do in athletics. But again, as a career, that didn't have much of an outlet. I was a swimming coach. I worked at Doc's camps and I worked with the team as I was an undergrad. But remember, I had to fend for myself. I couldn't go work for a corporation. And I quickly realized that if I wanted to make more money and if I wanted to support myself, I needed to do something else. So my first job was for the wellness program of a hospital about an hour away south from Bloomington, where I live. And also remember, I'm in southern Indiana in a college town. I didn't have the option to go back to Greece. My mother couldn't support me, and I would have to find a job, probably as a swimming coach there too. So I thought I need to pivot from being on the deck and working evenings and weekends to getting sort of an office job. But it was a wonderful opportunity to work in a very, very progressive hospital community program, and now it's a regional hospital that had healthy and community healthy living as a focus. So we were going into corporations and teaching smoking cessation programs and healthy back programs and mobility and movement for people that worked on the line or office workers. So I learned and went into corporate fitness and wellness. Then my next shift was to run the programs at Indiana University. They had just built a large fitness facility. And I stayed in that realm of work for about the first 10 to 12 years of my career. In the process of training trainers, personal trainers, group fitness instructors, if you see the lineage there's a lot of teaching components that go to this. How do you take a complex skill? How do you break it down? And how do you learn how to do it from the beginning? How do you teach people how to get up in front of a group and perform, project, motivate? There's a lot of correlation between being a fitness instructor and being a speaker. In fact, I would say they're the same, except the fitness instructor has to move people, which is more complicated. So after that, I was doing a lot of workshops as well on customer service for our members, on communication skills. And the next pivot was to go, and that was a scary pivot. I would say that was the scariest because I was doing very well, but I had just finished my MBA, and which I did while working. And I knew that if I stayed in that position, I would not grow. So as you know, in order to grow, we have to push ourselves and be uncomfortable. And there's times where I would sit at a desk going, what did I just do to myself? This is crazy. Why did I do this? This is uncomfortable. But as you know, and you preach, unless we do that, we're not going to grow and develop new skills. So the next jump was learning and development for the university, a fantastic opportunity to do a lot of consulting and organizational development work, trainings. And then the final jump, so I was there for about 7 years, and then the final jump was going into academics as a lecturer at first, where the learning, instead of a 4-hour human resources training seminar, the learning there was 16 weeks with younger, eager to learn, sometimes not very eager, but most of the times there to learn, and the learning made a lot more sense, or I would say the process of learning. So that's the story.
There you go. There you go. You know, I was thinking that our discussion will be more about you sharing your experience as a professor and helping people with change. But You have done so many changes,
No,
career changes.
exactly.
Amazing.
You have to, not, as you say, we don't all come into the world and have one career. For me, the underlying skill set of what I do is very, very similar. One would say from fitness to business. Well, if you have the ability to get in front of a group and project and present yourself, you can put that in many different specific boxes that you would say. In my mind, it makes sense. To someone else, it may seem crazy, but I don't care. It works for me, and it has worked for me.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely.
Can you share one pivotal moment in your career where what you just said, communication, helped you and changed the game for you?
Interesting you say that. I wrote that. I was 19. When I do a presentation on the art of asking, I asked at 19 if I could teach an electives course. It was a course on water polo. I had played at the time. I went to the class. They said to us, "We're sorry, there's no one to teach the class. Someone got sick and left, I don't know." And I don't know what I was thinking. And I said, "Can I teach it?" And I look back to that and I think it took so much courage, in a way, stupidity maybe at the time, but you know how sometimes you ask for something and someone says yes, and then you go, "Oh no, now what am I going to do?" But I love the challenge. I love the challenge. If there's no challenge, if there's no rub or a little bit of grittiness in the situation, I don't feel motivated. Now, that has changed through my life, but it's something that's there. And for me, I'm glad that I asked, because I had to put myself in a situation where I totally felt like an imposter. I remember they had to warm up for half of the class swim so I could figure out what to do. I had my game plan, but I had to build the courage up to speak to a group in English, by the way, which was not my first language. And they were older than me. Most of them were guys. It was very intimidating. So a pivotal moment, that was an ask that I made that I got a yes to. And all the other ones, I must say, Annie, have been very strategic. I look at a situation and I've made those shifts, as I described, with a lot of thought, with a lot of guidance from people in my advisory board, with a lot of thinking ahead. I don't usually sort of do a
jump and do
punch
something
and
out
say,
of.
I'm sick of this, I'm going to do something else. Those are emotional moves, and it may work for some people. I don't recommend them. For me, it doesn't work. I tend to be a little bit more strategic. And if you look at my background and a little bit of my life, it has been calculated to a point.
When I was listening to your story, the one thing that was coming out of it was resilience. And right, and resilience building is a buzzword these days, and I noticed that it is one of your specialty. Can we talk about this, and can you share what is it, and how can people build resilience, and again the context of change and careers?
Yeah, resilience, if you look at the description, it's not pushing through, it's not grinding it out, it's falling down and getting back up. It's recovering from adversity. And sometimes you bounce not just back, you bounce forward, you come back even stronger. But because resilience and having resilience, or the actual art of bouncing back, is painful. Literally, if you fall down, you have to pick yourself up. It's going to be more painful than just laying down there and saying it will pass. So having the mental, emotional muscle to be able to do this is what this is, the skill that we need to build. And I know you have young children as well. And as we raise our children, ours are a little bit off on their own now in their early 20s. We need to let them fall. And as cuddling parents, we shouldn't be there to catch them every time, because they need to learn the strength of actually getting up back on their feet and moving forward. So resilience building is that act of actually getting up and moving forward. But the way to practice that, now I'm going to go back to my athletic background, the term of having a threshold in aerobic training. So I know you go to the gym, or say that you're able to lift a certain amount of weight for so many reps. If you don't push yourself with a little bit more weight or with a few more reps, you're going to pretty much stay at a plateau. So if you find what the threshold is and move that threshold up, the concept comes from cardiovascular training, you're not going to be able to be fitter or faster or stronger. So the exercises of moving us to build that threshold or build our resilience muscle are the exercises that are not popular. Try something that you're not good at. Learn something that is new. Ask for things you cannot get. Those things are not things you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go ask for a raise. I'm going to ask for a project that is not meant for me. I'm going to ask to be on this team. We all shy away from that, but that's getting past that discomfort is what creates the growth. So does that?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Makes sense. It just the way I describe it is like it's just like a muscle. It's not a physical muscle, but it is something that you can only train by doing it and doing it several times. So the first time will be awful, second time will be less awful, and then by the seventh time you're going to be not a master, but you will be able to go into such situations without a lot of worry.
You will be more comfortable in your discomfort. And exactly this is where fitness and sport and health and living and performing at your top come together. Because when you do this with your body, your mind will follow. I teach indoor cycling classes. I cannot tell you, and you probably know with a lot of the brands that are out there that do the same, how inspirational and motivational something can be when you are on a bike that's not going anywhere, but it's all up here. It's the process that you go through, what you say to yourself as you're going through something difficult. Then you get off the bike and you think, I did that. Okay. All right. I'm going to go conquer the day, right? So there's a lot of transfer of skills and of training, literally. And that's why I also encourage people to move and be in touch with their bodies and challenge themselves in that way as well, within healthy boundaries, obviously.
We're talking about careers and career changes and your story, and you were talking about sometimes it's a pure fear and then confusion, and you don't know what is going to happen, etc. How can communication help us in this process of change?
Because of the discomfort that change creates, I believe that the most important part of the communication process is the communication you give to yourself. How you speak to yourself, how you coach yourself, how you process with yourself is critical. It starts from there, because whatever happens in here is what you project out. So if you can have a mantra, and it is, I'm strong, I'm confident, I've got this, I've done this before, just like athletes do when they're in a tough competition situation, writing it down, putting it around you, seeing it, doing things that bring you that level of internal strength. That is the communication that has to start with you for you to be able to project outwards. Now, the outward communication obviously has to be maybe more strategic if you tend to be too wordy. Now there's lots of AI tools that can help you be more concise. If you tend to use words that are too complicated, again, AI can help you simplify, or feedback from friends and relatives or videos can help you be better. If you tend to speak too fast, use fillers, sound less polished, all those are things you can practice. However, you have to have the awareness to be a better communicator of the things you need to improve. Without that awareness, you are playing the same record again, and I'm sounding old, but you're going through the same track again and you're not growing.
If you are in a new job and you're starting tomorrow, how are you using communication to communicate your value?
Don't assume all of it is spoken word. What your
That's
value
a good one.
communicates, right, is how you show up. What energy you bring to the room when you show up, how you stand, how you look, how present, how awake, how alert, how I don't want to even have anything to do with what you're wearing. It has to do more with energy and willingness to learn and show the openness to a new place. My daughter will be starting, thankfully, a new job very soon, and I know that she knows this. Today, she's going to meet with people that she's going to be meeting. This is not the time and place to start asking for details about the benefits or about, sometimes new employees will say, how much time do we have off? Don't ask, be savvy, be diplomatic, make a good impression, but be yourself. Quite often, when people are intimidated or they feel that they are restricted based on feedback they've been given before, if they haven't worked on something to improve it, then they end up making that hindering them. Let me give you an example. If someone has been told that they don't express enough emotion when they speak. I was working with several years back with an executive, and she was told that she was very stoic and not very expressive. Every time she would speak, she would over smile and say, I'm very excited to express. So she went across to the other end and it didn't seem genuine again. So know what you need to work on. Be yourself and bring your best self to those initial first opportunities to make an impression moments. Critical.
If you do the step that you did, right? You moved from fitness to academia, right? Broadly speaking. If you leave the corporate life and start something new, how do you communicate your value in such situation then?
That's where you have to do some work in answering the question, just you asking me, what's the connection? Where's the
transferable skill?
Transfer of skills, yes. You need to be able to ready to answer that. So when we talk about creating an authentic pitch, I have a whole course on this on LinkedIn, and I have an example, a real example of one of my former, an actor played it out, but one of my former MBA students wanted to work for a company that made equipment for agriculture. And he started going through his resume. And I said, this sounds like something I can read on the paper. Why this area and this company and you? And I minded out of him that he remembers summers sitting on his grandpa's lap and being in the fields and being on the tractors. And he put that into his story, which may he have been in finance, but he really wanted to go back and working in the field of agriculture and agrotech. And he was able to answer that. So to answer your question, don't expect people to connect the dots. In your introduction, in how you talk about yourself, you have to connect the dots for them. And that's where your pitch, your tell me a little bit about you, has to inform that. I don't anymore have to say, I started working in the fitness industry, which, by the way, I still do. I do. This weekend, I'm going and presenting workshops for Schwinn at a fitness conference. But that's kind of fun. I like it. I have friends there. It's my pastime, you may say. But I don't have to apologize for that anymore. To me, it makes sense. I can communicate it, or I show my value in what I do. But I would guess that someone younger that has moved from one industry to the other has to have the verbiage of the transfer of skills. Even something as simple as you can say, you may wonder, what is a fitness professional doing in the world of academia? Well, so you get ahead of your audience by answering the question that's in their head.
Yeah, well, when I left the corporate life, I realized that I have to have a 30-second pitch.
Yes.
To explain well, what is it? I mean, who am I? So that was really, really helpful.
Yes.
But to get to these 30 seconds, my goodness, I spent days thinking what exactly to say, because
Yes.
time flies like this.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
at a gathering, and they were asking everybody to introduce themselves, and they said 30 seconds, and I started talking, and I haven't even said the most important things, and boom, the 30-second gone, and I was like, my goodness, I have to get better.
And you did with practice, right?
Yeah, with
It's a
practice,
skill.
I really had to
Right.
think about it, yeah, and put a lot of thought and practice into it.
And I always say, that doesn't happen by osmosis. And a lot of people get nervous and they say, I'll get it done when I'm there, I'll do it right. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. Unless you break it down and you practice step by step by step, it's not going to happen. And kudos to you for having lived that.
Can you suggest some exercises or practices that people can adopt when in communication, when they're starting in a new field? I mean, what should they do?
So my first recommendation always is to think of who is the audience, and it may change. We do a lot of training for students that are PhDs and postdocs, and they're in very complicated science backgrounds, and they have to think of, am I communicating what I do to another faculty member, to a fellow graduate student? Am I communicating it to a conference attendee? So you have to have sort of different layers in which you can figure out what your pitch is. But you can talk about, my name is Annie, and I help people do this. I draw from my background in this, and I'm able to apply it here now. So have maybe a structure that you follow, that you adapt based on who is the audience. This changes when the audience is very broad. For example, you can build and write something in your LinkedIn profile. There you have to think about, how do I reach as broad of an audience as possible, where you don't want to be too technical, but you want to add a little bit of credibility by giving yourself the credit that you deserve. For you, you've been in the world of banking. I would not, in a quick sentence, I would say X amount of years with this big of banks or number of people. You need details that are vivid enough that tell the other person, oh, she's legit. And then you don't feel bad for even boasting this way. You should own that.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
Absolutely.
Build the structure and be able to say, here's who I am, here's what I do, not what your job is, but what is the value that you bring to what you do, and where does that skill set come from? And what can it do for the person listening? Most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Even I'm learning, because somebody would say, oh, she has 25 years experience, but you learn until you die.
And I hope you say the 25 years of experience. You don't say, oh, I'm new.
Absolutely.
This is a different field.
Oh, no. I start with big numbers. If somebody's having an international career and they're making this change, and on top of changing jobs, they're changing the place, the country, the town. What is your advice for these people? What should they do? How should they prepare?
The biggest mistake one can make in all of this change, career and life, location, is to say, people are people. I'll figure it out. We will connect on a human level. Big mistake. Assuming that, because it will take you a lot of time to unravel from this. You need to be self-aware of what your values, what your experiences, and what your culture is, and understand that when there is a conflict, and even though you are a fellow Balkan, there are, I'm sure, many differences, and you are perceived as a foreigner in Greece. Even though Greece is one of our top values is hospitality, when it comes to the honeymoon is over, I'm sure that there's a lot of things on a day-to-day basis that you notice that are key differences or even conflicts, one can say. Understand where that's coming from. Never assume we'll figure it out or assume sameness, as I say. That is a big problem that causes you a lot of heartache. know your values is the first thing I would say. Understand and be self-aware and accept that it's okay to be different. The second is to stay curious. I'm sure someone like you has not made this move by wanting to accept the status quo. I see in your posts, you go out and you explore and you're hiking and walking and you go to a local gym. You don't stay and you do fitness in your house or hire a trainer to come to your house. So you are vulnerable and curious, which creates a wonderful recipe for growth and learning. And finally, never underestimate the energy that something like this takes, not just on you, but on your family as well. So moving a career is one thing, but moving the career and moving everyone in the family, because you are a core nucleus of the family, you have to feel strong for everyone around you to feel strong. So where do you get that strength? This is the question I would ask. So you have to take care of you. You have to not overstack your plate or put too many goals on your plate to push yourself to the point of being exhausted. Because even though I know it's a rainy day in Athens today, but the sun shines over 333 days of the year. I looked at that statistic. Even though you get a lot of energy from that, it still is a drain and things move slower at times. They're more bureaucratic. So take your time and give yourself permission. If I were coaching you, you would be a person that would say, pull back on the gears. You cannot jump into fifth gear on this highway right away. You just need to stay in the smaller gears for a while, set some realistic goals, and wait for the whole family unit to catch up as well.
Absolutely. I've moved 7 times, and 3 times with kids. And the only thing that saves me is I like change. I like to move. But every month, the first month of every move, it's one and the same. It's like, oh no, I made a big mistake. I don't want to do this anymore. Let's pack and go back. This is everywhere. It takes me a month. It takes me a month to kind of start liking everything around me and settle down, so to say.
That's good self-awareness.
Yeah,
that's good self-awareness.
Yeah.
Do you journal? Do you write that down so you could go back and see it?
No, I don't journal. I just never. I started writing first time when I started writing on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I don't write. But I discovered that I like writing, but I can't go to journaling. It just, I don't have the patience. That's my problem.
One thing, I saw a journal and I want to get it, and I want to get it for our kids too, that forces you every day just to write the 3 things you're grateful for. And it's the same day of the year. I want to go back to this and think about how it goes. So you can go back and look at last year, this date, what did I say? But just by writing the 3 things you're grateful for, or the 3 things that you appreciate, you can still go back and track sort of what happened. I'm anxious to figure that out. My daughter's told me not to use the word anxious. So I'm eager to find that, because like you, I wouldn't want to do long pen journaling, writing out, but something that's more strategic like that would work.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm not saying no to that. Maybe I'll explore it. But I do that. Every evening when I go to bed, I think of what I'm grateful for. And every morning when I get up, I say, well, another day, this is the things I'm grateful for. And that's amazing, because a lot of people ask, so how do you keep your energy? And the thing is, that self-talk works for me. I mean, I wake up, especially the days when I wake up and I just want to go back to bed. That's the only wish I have, but I can't. So I get up and I start thinking, but I have this and I'm healthy and I have this house and I live in this beautiful country. And then 5 minutes you perk up and you go ahead.
Remember, you asked me, what's the most important communication part of change? It's that self-talk that's so critical. Whether you write it down or keep it in the vault, that's fine.
Yeah.
But do it. Don't not do it. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about rejection, because we have so many rejections in our life and we always talk about the rejections and not about the good things. So how do we handle this? I mean, what would be your advice? How should people handle this better?
Well, first, if you have rejections, it means you tried and you asked for things that you were not supposed to have. And I would celebrate that at first, because if you don't have rejections, it means that you're playing it safe. So give yourself credit for that. Good for you for asking, I would say. Now, you don't want to exhaust yourself by putting yourself out there all the time to find validation by getting a yes. So be mindful of the energy that it takes each time that you put yourself out there, but give yourself credit for trying. I would look back, and in hindsight 2020, another thing I would say that I've learned through life, sometimes rejections were a blessing. In my life, sometimes things that didn't work out, thank goodness they didn't work out. I would not have been happy. I would not have been fulfilled. Looking back, I wanted something so bad at the time, and then I think, I wouldn't have liked it now. So have a little bit of that perspective. And then self-reflect. Rejection stings, it hurts, it puts us down. Okay, have your toolkit of how you're going to learn from it. Is there something you could have done differently? Is there a way that you will learn and grow and approach in a different way? And is there a way that you can continue to build up your strength through that time? When you get rejected, it's a push. You fall to the ground. Understand that that's part of, you need time to recover from something like that. Don't just like say, I'm a hero, I will overcome, I'm fine. Because a lot of times when you say, I'm fine, you're not fine. It's okay not to be okay for a short amount of time. So I'm not sure if I can tell you the exact formula to overcome. I would say, don't stop trying to be rejected, because that means you're not taking risks or asking for things you can't have. But don't overdo it. Take care of yourself while you're going through it, and also find the wisdom in that maybe sometimes it's for the best. In Greece, we say, κάθε εμπόδιο σε καλό. Every barrier is for the good. You never know when you're going through it if it's something that is actually a good thing.
Yeah, the silver lining.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything bad has a silver lining.
Sometimes,
and then
absolutely.
you only see it when you look back.
Yeah.
You don't see it in the moment.
Yeah.
But when you look back, you see, oh, that was good.
I will say some things don't have a silver lining. There's some things, and I'm not talking just career now, some things, my father dying when I was 7, there's nothing good about that. It's tragic, and it's very, very, very difficult. When I look back, however, I would not be the person I am today if that hadn't happened. Who would I have been if that hadn't happened? Where would I be if that hadn't happened? We could just sit there, and I can think about that all the time. I think about it, but I'm grateful to have what I have, and I count my blessings, and I'm very aware that it's not something that's been gifted to me. I've worked for it.
Let's talk about my favorite skill, listening
the one that
skills.
started the conversation, yeah.
Yeah, the one that started. So why it is so underrated? Nobody teaches listening in school, university, nowhere. Nobody. I have looked for trainings about listening, and I'm telling you, there are very few. Why is that?
I don't know. Maybe because we're too busy talking, like the speaking courses. I would say listening has so many different levels, just like the gears in the car that you have when you drive. I don't know if you drive an automatic or a stick, but high intensity or high impact listening is 5th gear listening. And if you drive, especially around Athens all the time, you can't be in 5th gear the whole time. So give yourself permission to not be at that high level of listening. Otherwise, you would be exhausted all of the time. So understand, be aware of that first. Another thing is to understand there's different types of listening you need to do. And if you know, and if you have alignment of what does the person need me to do with my listening, and what can I do, if there's alignment with that, that's helpful. But if you don't know at what level you need to listen, do I need to listen for details? Do I need to listen for the big picture? Do I need to listen to have an opinion or to be empathetic? If it's not, and if you're misaligned, you've probably had this. A friend is telling you, this happened to me, and this, and you go, what temperature was the room when and they go, What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So understand it's high intensity listening. You can't do it all the time. There's a types of listening roles you have to take and know where that is. Know that it takes a lot of energy to listen in that fifth gear level. For me, it has to be this time of the day. It has to be not a very busy time of the week. And because of that, when I want to tell you something, I will ask, when is a good time for me to speak to you? I have to honor that for you as well. Otherwise, if I catch you at a bad time, it's not going to be effective. So understand where your energy needs to be when you listen with that as well. And then my final tip would be use tools to help you be a better listener in situations. For example, note-taking when you're in these types of environments, or prepare before you do that. Environments that are less busy or less distracting than others, if it's one-on-one. Time of the day, obviously, time of place. I do a good listening when I'm in the car. I can listen to a podcast well. I can have a conversation that's let's catch up. I call them drive and dial. I will literally, I just yesterday, I'm driving to the airport on Saturday. Can we do a drive and dial? It's a great catch up. And I used to do it a lot when the kids were young, because I didn't want to be the mom that's on the phone when I'm home. I didn't want to be on the phone, but I had the need to connect with friends. So I would do it while I'm driving. But it's okay to have that. But that's not probably a deep, when someone is telling me about a very important event in their life, I probably need to be face to face, and I want to be 100% present for them. But you can't put that requirement on yourself to be 100% present all the time. It's impossible. So am I a bad listener? Yes, very often. My husband would say so. My running friends would say so. I ask them to repeat this stuff all the time. I didn't hear it. I missed this chapter. We live busy lives. Give yourself a break, but understand the whole gamut of what it takes to be a good listener.
It's very tough to be a good listener, especially when you know that you have to be, but there is something very pressing that you have to be, and you're just trying to be deep into listening to that person, but you at the same time you're thinking, oh my goodness, I have to go.
Yeah, or in my mind, I'm processing this my own filter, and I'm not truly listening to what they say. That's exactly good awareness. Mm-hmm.
Let's end up the podcast with, I'm not going to end on a high note, because we all talk about the success and all the good stories, but people learn more if we share with them stories where we failed, stories where we had a setback, and what these stories taught us. So can you share with us such a story, and how did you overcome? What did you learn?
I would say that the toughest and latest difficult setback, I wouldn't call it a failure, is opening a new business. You can never be prepared, and you also don't want to paralyze yourself with trying to be super prepared because you missed the moment. So I opened a business when I thought the time was right to open the business. The pain that you go through, I have so much respect for entrepreneurs of starting something from scratch, a brand from scratch, wherever it may be, is definitely a roller coaster, emotionally, physically, and everything that involves around it. And for us, it was a fitness studio that 2 years in, just as things were starting to work, COVID hits. And do you close? Do you stay open? I would say sometimes sometimes I'm thinking back, would it have been better just to say, I'm done? It may have been better to do that then and accept defeat. Sometimes the failure is in the process of not accepting failure. We drain ourselves for that. And as I look back, maybe in processing some of this, I think, was it worth so much energy, mental and physical energy, to try to do this? I'm not sure yet. And people around us in the community will say, yes, we're so glad that you did it. But what has been the cost in putting that much energy into that? So I would say is be very aware of the cost to you as a person, and be more okay of not being the hero, of not letting failure happen, because we learned so much from that. The biggest lesson I've learned from setbacks and failure is the clarity of letting something go, the clarity that gives you. You've walked away from a career, walked away from a job, that freedom and that release of letting go that it gives you, for me, is at the right time. And if it's well calculated, it's a good thing to do. So giving yourselves permission to not fail or to make a decision. To others, it may look like failure, but to you, it may, back to, I tried. It wouldn't have worked if I wouldn't have known if I didn't try. And I would say that disappointments and setbacks will happen. You can't hold that back. Otherwise, you're not using all the gears. If I go back to the same analogy, I'm not sure if I'm giving you that. Yes, I've been fired from a job before. I've been not selected. I've asked for something. I haven't gotten it. I don't consider those failures. I consider them setbacks. Right. So, but I would say, putting myself out there to 6 years ago, open a new business was a huge learning experience. I'm glad that I have gone through it, but I've done a lot of reflection because of it as well.
So it was a great ending of the podcast at the end of the day.
Good.
Thank you so much. This was so interesting. I learned a ton of things. I might give journaling a try, especially the short version of it.
Because I'm in the search for it as well. So when I find it, I'll send it to you, because I would like to start the new year with that as well. Because what you're grateful for changes, or forcing yourself to think of different things, but then you can kind of look back and realize what's happening in your life. That would be good. But I will share it when I find it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Tatiana. It was great. I wish you all the best, and we keep in touch. This is all for today. Thank you for being with me till the end. And before you go, I have a huge favor to ask. Would you please subscribe or leave a message and send us any comments and recommendations? The more we hear from you, the better this podcast will be. Thank you for now, and see you in the next episode.